Welcome to another episode of the Works Podcast. I have a dear good friend of mine, Kevin Gleason, guys. Boxer trainer, has his own academy. Stay ready,
Boxing,
stay
yeah.
ready boxing. Guys, I met him about a year ago, or was it this year?
It was this year.
We hit it off. I was able to sponsor a boxer, be able to go back to the scene. As you guys know, I'm a huge boxing enthusiast. I love boxing. Grew up watching a lot of boxing, and it was a great pleasure of mine to be able to be behind the scenes and see how you guys train the boxers, get the boxers warmed up. But before we go into any kind of detail, Kevin, I want you to tell everybody a little bit background story of who you are, where you grew up in, and then we'll go from there, man.
So I grew up out here in Parent Pines, went to school, born and raised out here. I started boxing at about 14 years old. It was, I always tell the story was never supposed to be what it is, like being a boxing trainer or whatnot. I started boxing at about 14. I was actually playing baseball and then hockey, and I had switched off. I had started boxing during like the summertime at a local police athletic league right here in Pines, off of Johnson and I forget the crossroads, but it's a local police athletic league. And I just thought it would be something that I was going to do regularly just for fun, you know, the way I played baseball and hockey and stuff. And it just kind of took a whirlwind, man. Started boxing at 14. I was kind of on and off with it through high school. Stopped once I got to like graduate high school. Started picking it back up when I got to about like 22. And a buddy of mine originally opened up a gym, and he asked me to help him, and he was paying me to actually spar with him and hold mitts. And that's how I kind of got into coaching a little bit, was just helping him out. And then it just kind of grew into what it is now.
And you were always a huge boxing fan, or did you watch?
Yeah, always. You know, I kind of idolized my brother. I felt like he was, you know, a super tough guy. And that's kind of what drew me into boxing, was I wanted to be, you know, tough like him when I was young. You know, Roy Jones was like my favorite fighter growing up. So it was kind of what put me into the gym. And then from there, man, just like I said, it's kind of took a world of its own, man.
So you were playing baseball, and then because of your brother, you decided, let me tap into boxing?
I was playing baseball, then I started playing hockey. And then again, I just thought boxing was just going to be another sport that I kind of did. I was trading off between like that and wrestling. And it just kind of, like I said, it took a world of its own. I enjoyed it, but I was like, all right, you know, life kind of took over. You graduate high school, you got to get a job, things like that. So I was working a full-time job. And then I started training again, helping out this guy, getting him ready for his fights. And from there, it kind of grew into a little bit of clientele from that situation, because I was helping him out. He was paying me like $20 for sparring. I'd spar with him for like 4 to 6 rounds, and then hold mitts for about 4 to 6 rounds. He'd pay me $20 for, you know, the hour. And then other students in his gym slowly started asking me to help them. At that time, I was about 25, 26. So I took a gap between like graduating high school. I didn't do any boxing at all. And then I started doing it again around like 22 to about 23, stopped again, and then picked it back up at 25.
How did you decide, you know, I'm able to train somebody? At what level, or how many years of experience did you feel comfortable? Like, when did you feel comfortable saying, okay, now I could teach this to somebody?
I mean, I had so much experience over the years of boxing and fighting and things like that.
Were you a street fighter kind of guy? Were you always getting into fights in the street in school?
Nothing like that. I just understood boxing and fighting. I understood, like, you know, human movement, how you know, positionally and everything else that fighting worked. So again, it just wasn't supposed to be that. It was just helping him out. And the more you're around it, I had studied boxing. Like, once I started to take the figure of being a trainer, you know, I had studied it that much more from a trainer's perspective rather than a competitive fighting perspective, right? So, you know, over the years, it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. You know, with coaching, it was one of those things that the more that I had put time in, invested in my craft, learning it, studying it, doing it, I just started kind of growing and getting better at it. You know, so with coaching, it was just, everybody's kind of different. You have to coach everybody a little bit different. So it was just over the years of learning and mastering the craft of how people work, how are people are different from each other, fighters, etc.
You must have a lot of patience, bro.
Yeah, for sure, man. You know, I never thought that being a teacher, you don't think about that perspective, but now that I've been doing it, I've been coaching now since, aggressively full time kind of coaching, probably since 2014. And you never think like the patience part, you're just in love with what you're doing. It was a one sport that I had picked up, boxing, that I loved, and I couldn't get enough of it. I think I had kind of grown out of baseball, grown out of hockey. I wrestled, played basketball. You kind of grow out of it after a year or two. Boxing was something that since 14, I've just never fallen out of love with it. So, but so what you were saying, you never really think of the patience part. You're just like, oh, I love doing this. And then as you progress and you start doing it full time and you're in the gym the way I am, you start to, you have to have some sort of patience to be a good teacher, right?
100%. And not only that, especially if you're there's a lot of people that sign up to your academy because they see people online, they see people on your page. Man, you know what? I want to try this out to at least to have some kind of workout. But then I'm pretty sure you're repeating certain things to them constantly,
Sure.
over and over
Yeah,
and
of course,
over and
man.
over
Of
again,
course.
and they still don't get it. And I think that's when the patience
100%.
comes.
Everybody learns differently. Some people pick things up really quick. Some people it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah. I wanted to. Obviously, we're going to talk more into boxing, but so you started training, and then did you have a certain like mentor, somebody that said, "Hey, look, you know what? This is the way you should go about it. If you're going to start your own academy, this is the way you should do this. This is what you should be charging. Certain things like that, and how you should structure your time, because obviously you have a family, you have kids,
Sure.
and it's
That's something new. I think over the years I've had tons of mentors. Just small spaces here and there. I've had mentors in the gym that own gyms. I've had mentors, that own different businesses that taught me different lessons here and there. But I think for me, I always say the hard part for me as a business owner, a small business owner now, anybody that I worked for in a gym, because I've been working in gyms since I was probably like, I've been in gyms since I was 14 years old in boxing gyms. I've worked in gyms since I was probably about 18 on and off. I worked in a lot of boxing gyms. So they weren't necessarily business minded, some of these trainers. They were just knew how to train people. So anything I learned over the business, and especially over the last decade of doing this, was some of it was on the job, some of it was through other business minds like yourself, just picking their brain. Hey, what do you think I should do here? What I should do here? Things like that. But mentor wise, I've had a lot of different mentors as far as coaching goes, and I've been fortunate for that. Business wise, it's been I didn't meet a lot of business owners that were successful in the gym. They just knew how to be good trainers.
and good trainers obviously bring in the clients,
Sure.
but it's just everything else behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Especially if you want to scale, because it's only you.
100%.
And then if you have a certain amount of clients that you're training, how do it's tough, dude, to manage your time and make sure that you give them 100% of your time.
So I'm a new dad. I had a daughter about a year ago now, and learning to manage being a father, being a business owner, all these clients, and I am a one-on-one based business, has been a little bit of a learning curve, because it's constantly going, going, going. I usually start my day at around 6 or 7 a.m. I'll train clients till about 1, go home, take care of my daughter, relieve my wife, and then I'll come back to the gym around 4 and run it till about 8 o'clock. So it's a balance, and it's learning that. I often say that I'm a great trainer, and I'm a poor businessman, or I'm starting to learn the business side of things, because again, I never learned that, where people are like, hey, this is how you're going to construct your business. This is how you open up an LLC. This is how you get a small business loan. This is how you all those little things. I've kind of learned that on the job, growing, marketing, all that stuff. I've learned that on the job or through other people that I admired from the outside. It's a lot.
No, I trust me. I know, man. When I started my business, it was the same way.
Yeah.
Just keep going. I had my mentor, and people that would give me advice, but at the end of the day, you just have to just take action,
You learn on the job, man.
and that's it. Just take action.
100%.
When it comes time to to train and stuff like that, you take in any kind of, doesn't matter, from zero experience all the way to, years of experience.
So as funny as that is, rolling into that previous question, when I first started off as a trainer, I was just a competitive trainer. I wanted to just train fighters, people with experience, etc. Over the years, I developed into doing that. I train people that have never thrown a punch to people that are fighting professionally. Um, and I think because of the way I market myself on social media, a lot of people only think, oh, he only works with people that are experienced. But I train everybody, every level, especially. I mean, I'd say over the last 5, 6 years, I've taken in anybody, But again, learning that business wise is like kind of pivoting and learning how to market myself to everybody rather than just what you see on social media as is just advanced people. So
No, of course, man. I've always been tempted to take boxing
you got to pull up,
classes.
man. You got to come by, man, one day.
I have to, man. It's because in our mind, especially us guys, we think we know how to fight, but in reality,
100%.
we
man,
do not know how to fight.
No,
bro.
100%.
We do not know
man.
how to throw
I
a punch.
think that's kind of what drove me into boxing, to be honest with you. At like 14, I wanted to make sure I was able to defend myself. And you start to learn that over the years. Like the more you're in the gym, the more you're like, man, most people don't know, anything about boxing. Can we curse on this podcast?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, most people don't know shit about boxing. It's actually the first sign you see when you walk into my gym, for a reason, because a lot of people don't know how to fight. You just think as a man, your ego is like, oh, I could take care of myself, But it's important to learn that.
How many times have you seen like the smallest guy take down the biggest guy?
It depends on how advanced they are, right?
Okay.
I've seen a lot of it over the years. You can get guys that are super advanced, been training for years, versus a guy that comes in with a little bit of an ego that thinks he can fight. So you'll see that from time to time for sure.
Humble him quick,
man. 100%. So yeah, it's just all the learning curve
but
there.
besides obviously learning self-defense, it's also a good workout though. You stay in great shape.
I would say half of my clients come in for that reason. They want to learn how to box, obviously. And I tell people all the time, there's these huge boutique gyms that are, teaching, more fitness boxing stuff. You're going in, listening to music really loud, the lights, and you're just punching away. And they think that, you come into if you do a session with me, I do 50-minute sessions, you're going to burn over 400 to 500 calories, depending on the session. So you're going to learn how to box, but you're also going to get a great workout in. So a lot of people think, again, that, oh, he's just sports specific to teaching boxing, but you're going to get a great workout.
When you started off obviously trying to obtain like professional fighters,
Mm-hmm.
as training, how would you market yourself? How would you gain that trust to these professionals, knowing that there's so many other trainers out there and you're just starting up your own? How did you market yourself to like sell it? Because you basically have to sell yourself.
So I started off with two fighters, a kid named Landon and then a kid named Miguel Baeza. They were both in the UFC. So they were the first two fighters that I kind of worked with. And I think with credibility, it's just being good at what you do, And again, in those early years of me being a trainer, transitioning from doing competitively to training, it was just mastering my craft. I was obsessed with it. I would be on my phone watching a YouTube fight, watching the TV, learning, taking notes, and then learning in the gym from other trainers what I liked, what I didn't like, taking those pieces and then kind of developing your style. So as far as everything isn't for everybody, right? Like I know that, I feel like I'm a phenomenal trainer, but there's some individuals that'll be like, I don't really like working with him, this style, whatever it may be. Earning credibility is just something of over the years you have to put in the work. When I first started, I worked with a lot of amateur boxers that were young kids from the age of, I think I was taking them at 10 years old till about like 15. Earning that trust, earning that credibility, their success starts developing into your name, and then it starts kind of rolling out there. So in the earlier years, you have to earn that credibility. You're not going to just go out there and be like, yeah, I'm a trainer now. I want to work with a top 10 guy. That's not going to happen. In most cases, you have to earn that credibility, earn that trust with what you're doing. So word of mouth is everything. If I'm training you and I've taken you from nothing, and you start winning fights, and you start getting really good, and then you start kind of your name starts kind of ringing out, and everybody starts seeing you. You know, they're gonna wonder who you're being trained by, and then it's also a big word of mouth kind of business. You know.
Yeah. Th- Going into the boxer's mentality, because you obviously you spend some time with
Sure.
them. Do obviously you hear, these professionals, that they some get intimidated, some get nervous. What's your experience with these professional fighters? Do they are there is it true that they obviously some do get those nerves that they're scared,
Of course.
they don't want to get knocked out, they
We're all
don't.
human, you know.
Okay.
We're all human, so everybody's different. You know, I couldn't even tell you how many fighters I work with professionally and amateurs, and how many I've cornered over. I'd have to say easily 200 plus fights now at this point. You know, some fighters are very calm and they know how to control their nerves really well. Others are real nervous in the back. You know, you can kind of sense it. Even I've worked with some high level guys that are super nervous that have well over 20, 30 professional fights, but still are very nervous. You know, it's kind of learning to channel that. And I think a good trainer can kind of get into the mind of their fighter, right? You know, that's something you prepare for. You know, it's proper preparation. And if we've done a great camp and we've done all the right things, you know, fighters always going to have those nerves in the back because that's healthy. They're about to go compete on TV in front of thousands of people. They're going to have those nerves walking in, but the preparation part I think cancels out the unhealthy nerves, if you will, because you have to have those healthy nerves of just naturally being, you know, going into a fight. I think the unhealthy nerves are: did I do the right things? Did I spar enough? Did I get enough training and things like that? And I think also a trainer comes in. Something that I've learned over the years is making sure you're also training your fighter's mind.
There you go.
You know,
I was just gonna ask you that.
100%.
Besides training the body, obviously, do you have those sit downs with them and say, "Hey, look, how's your mental? How's this?" Kind of prepping them up for the
Absolutely. I mean,
for the big day.
for me, for sure. You know, I try my hardest to, if I'm working with a fighter one on one, I'm trying my hardest to make sure that they're in the right mindset. Everything's good at home with their family. If they're married with kids, they're feeling, you know, confident in the preparation and everything else. You have to make sure that that's right. Because I always say, the training for a fight, if you're doing an 8 week or 10 week or 6 week camp, it's 80% physical, 20% mental, and then it switches. In my opinion, come fight week and fight night, it's 80% mental, 20% physical. The training has already been done. You know, they're prepared. So it's just making that switch to making sure that they know what they have to do. They're prepared to do so, and they're locked into
Yeah,
that.
they're ready
and
to go
fully
to war.
focused. Yeah. So it's definitely an emotional, roller coaster. Dealing with fighters is like dealing with, dealing in a relationship in a sense, and it could be tough. It could be a tough business because, everybody's different. Some people are super highly emotional, and some people are a lot more even keeled.
Yeah, how hard is it, man? When you're in a corner and you see things, and you're telling you you're telling your guy, "Hey, look, you gotta, keep your hands up," or, "Hey, do this," and you're telling them what the errors that you're seeing, and they're not they're not doing it.
That's super hard.
And it could either causes them the fight, or you know it costs them the fight.
I've been in situations like that plenty of times. Like I said, I've cornered, I'd have to say probably a little over, I would think, 200 fights at this point, amateur and professionally. And you go through all those experiences. And like you were asking me earlier, I think that's what gives you the experience to be a great trainer. You have to put in your road work and your time in the sport, and that develops you as a trainer. Every time you're working with somebody, you kind of say, all right, I like this. I didn't like what I did here. I could get better at this. And I think those kind of situations are super frustrating. I've worked with plenty of fighters that just don't listen to you, in the corner. And it's hard. I always say that kind of separates the goods from the greats. If you're not going to, and I don't think that they're doing it on purpose. I think a fighter has so much going on in their mind when they're competing that they're in a fight, right? And there's so much noise that they have to learn to block out and stay focused. Some fighters, like I said, they don't do it on purpose. And some fighters, I wouldn't say they do it on purpose. They just have their mindset of what they want to do with certain things, and that's what separates a great fighter from a good fighter. The great fighters know how to lock in, stay focused, listen to what their corners telling them, make adjustments, and just have that tunnel vision where the good fighters sometimes they kind of want to do things their way. You know, it's tough, but it's part of the game.
Do you think boxers is all talent, or you think they could be developed?
I think that you have to have ability to box competitively, one way or another. I think that some people are a lot more talented than others, but that could be developed. You know, I've worked with some people that weren't nearly as talented as others, but had the worth ethic, times three men, and they would get better than that individual. I think what stops fighters from being great is ego. A lot. And a lot of coaches won't say that. I have no problem saying
Give
that.
me give us an example.
I think ego gets in the way of a lot of fighters, most fighters, and that stops them from being as great as they can potentially be. I think that a lot of fighters want to kind of do things their way. Not all by any means, but a lot of them want to do things their way. They have to understand that this is a team effort. And I think that as a coach, that can draw frustration for me for sure. I always have the saying, whether fighters want to hear it or not, fighters don't make me, I make fighters. Meaning I'm the one training a fighter, and we need to have an equal partnership with each other. And I think with a lot of times fighters are so, it's what their job is, man. They have to be locked into themselves. You know what I mean? I get that part of it. That ego has to be there to a certain extent. But they have to remember it's a team effort, and that goes for everybody in the team. Their wives, girlfriends, if it's a woman, their husbands, boyfriends, whatever, their family, their coaches, their team, their whole staff. It's a joint effort. It takes a tribe, and I think sometimes fighters get so caught up in what I got to do. They don't care about everything else, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense, and I could relate that into business as well. In business is the same thing. If you have a team behind you that's telling you certain things, I just finished having a meeting with my team. That's why I rolled up a little bit late, and you struggle with that. It's not that it's ego. It's that sometimes you think as the business owner, everything, and it has to be your way, or you think that what's right. But you also have to listen to your team that's telling you, hey, you got to tighten up here. Hey, look, we should do this, and you have to be receptive to that information.
Take into consideration, 100%.
It's the same thing as business, man, and that's
100%.
that's why there's some people that succeed in business and some that don't.
And that's the fight game is, I say 1% of fighters make it to the top where they actually make money, they become a world champion, they do good. And, it's very hard for fighters to understand, like, hey, man, and it's even as a trainer, we all have egos in this sport, right? We want to be the best. But you have to take that into consideration that your team has your best intentions for you. And that can be hard for certain people because, in the end of the day, they're the ones going into that ring. They're the ones competing. They're the ones putting their life on the line. So it's kind of a push and pull thing. At this point in my life as a trainer, I say this all the time, I only work with fighters, competitors that I can kind of relate to on a personal level. It's not about the money with fighters. It's can I spend 8 weeks with you as a person? Are you a good person? Do you care about the team? Do you care about, yourself? Do you care about what you're trying to accomplish here? All those things, and that's the tough part.
Yeah, it is. The relationship between obviously the boxer and the trainer has to be tight, very tight. Trying to see here. How obviously you spend more time with them to be able to see if you like them, but have you spent or dedicated enough of your time to a certain fighter, and at the end you pour in like everything you got, and I don't want to say they fuck you, but
Unfortunately,
yeah. But in a sense that they don't see what you see, and you're trying to
Unfortunately, that happens most of the time. And that's just a truth and a reality that again a lot of trainers won't speak on. that happens, I would say, majority of the time. In the end, the relationship between a trainer and their fighter will usually go south, for so many different reasons, whether it's financially, whether it's, it's a bond, man, when you're training somebody and you're with them a lot and there's a relationship and it's just like a brother, or a father-son
Mm-hmm.
relationship. You're not going to agree with everything I have to say and vice versa. And sometimes you have to take your ego out of it. And that's hard. That's hard for, both parties, I feel like, especially as,
Especially
as
grown
men.
men. Especially grown men.
100%. So you took the words out of my mouth as a grown man. And, it's often that draws out to a point where it's like, all right, well, this isn't making sense anymore. Because somebody feels like they're maybe pulling too much. I think a lot of trainers that I've worked with or spoke with, they feel like, man, I've poured all everything into this and I'm not receiving that. That's happened to me, man. I've worked with a fighter that I poured probably about 5, 6 years into, and I wasn't getting compensated financially. I wasn't getting my just due as a trainer. And it wasn't, now that I'm so removed from it and I'm older, I don't think he was doing that. I know he wasn't doing that intentionally. I think he was so caught up in what he was trying to achieve and his dream and his vision that he often nothing else mattered. His family, his friends, everything else, which is, sometimes it is that. It takes that. But you have to remember that your trainers and your team are people. You know what I mean? They need to be fed, and I'm not talking financial. I'm talking, from the emotional point. Like, hey, man, I couldn't have done this without you. I always say that goes far, man. I had a guy in the gym the other day, and I was talking to my partner Jeff about it. I took out the trash. I put the trash right next to the can. I'm like, I'm gonna toss this trash out when I'm walking out. And after I got done working with this individual, he stopped. He was leaving the gym. He stopped and he's like, "Hey, do you want me to toss his trash out?" I'm like, "No, I got it." But that goes a long way for me.
Little
Well,
gestures.
there's a lot of individuals that'll be like, they won't even think about that. They don't care about that. They'll just walk right out. So for me personally, like I said, I have to have a personal relationship with you. I want to know how your family's doing, and I want you to ask me the same. Hey, how's your wife? How's your kid? How's everything going with you? Not just coming in and just, we're working. I don't want to spend that kind of time with somebody if I can't have a relationship. And I have worked with people that it was strictly business and it's gone good, but we have to have some sort of, personal relationship because we're about to do something that there's a lot of emotion involved in it, when it comes to fighting.
Is there any books that you recommend fighters to read to get them right in the mind? Or audiobooks maybe as they run their miles, stuff that they should listen to.
Um,
The reason why I say this is because obviously everybody knows Cuss and Tyson, how he
I
he prepared him
yeah.
mentally to be the greatest of the greatest by reading all these books, all these.
As far as books goes, I mean, any books that I recommend are just business books that I feel like
Okay.
that were good for me. I just got done reading The Energy Bus. I don't know if you read that book. It was a really good book. Um, Green Lights by with his name Matthew McConaughey, like
Oh
things
yeah.
like that. I read. As far as fight books, I couldn't tell you, because again, everybody does things
Not
different in
fight
that
books,
business.
but I'm saying like all these you know war heroes or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that to
yeah, yeah.
get them.
I've never really read into that. Like anything I read now at this point in my life is something that's going to help me better myself as a person and a trainer, and a business owner. Um, but as far as that goes, like I had this conversation with a fighter that we were speaking about earlier, um, Eric Tudor. He just got done fighting, and he was in the gym yesterday, and he was working out. And I said, "Listen, you want to work on the things that you feel like." For me, mentally, this is how I train my fighters. It's not a book. It's not a motivational video. It's you know methodical. What's going to help you become a better fighter? So I'm like, how would you beat yourself? I asked him. What are three things that you felt like you could have done better in your last fight? He fought about 2 weeks ago. What are three things you could have done better? How would you beat yourself? Because now there's enough video on you. He fought a 10-round fight. He's had a couple professional fights. I think he has 11 or 12 professional fights. There's enough video on you that somebody could study that and figure you out. So you have to be different every time you fight. That's how I
Correct.
get to a fighter. You know, sorry. That's mental for me. Is like, how can we better you? How if I'm fighting you, if you're fighting yourself, how would you beat yourself? Those kind of things is how I train my fighters. It's very much sports specific because I feel like a book or maybe a motivational video motivate you to want to work out, but you need the discipline and the right things. You need to be hearing the right message when it comes to training. And I think that kind of separates me a little bit from different trainers is, I'm very much sports specific to what we're doing. When I'm in that gym, it's everything boxing. The details, the things that other trainers aren't doing. I feel like nowadays there's a lot of trainers out there that are more trainers rather than teachers. They're just going to get you in that, get that workout and get that session and get your sparring in, get that hard work in. You need that, but you also need the mental stuff of that. How are we going to make you better? What do we need to improve on? What did you do wrong that we can do better? What did you do good that we can get better at?
Yeah, man, that comes a long way.
100%.
That comes a long way. You think boxing is dying or no?
It's a great question, man. I wouldn't say dying. I just think when the UFC came in, they figured a way that, all right, this is what's wrong with boxing. There's too many hands in there. And they took the blueprint of boxing and made it better. It's one sport in the sense of like the UFC. They run everything. They knew how to market their athletes and make them superstars. I think boxing has been around so long that their theory is we're boxing. We don't need to get better kind of mentality. And it's very political in that sense. But I wouldn't say it's dying by any means because there's still some great fights out there.
There's a lot of good fights.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing great, great numbers. I just think that they need to make a shift, with time. How can we kind of tighten up on boxing, make it a little bit more of one unity? You have 4 belts out there, 4 recognized world title belts. You
think it should just be one?
I think there should absolutely just be one.
Which belt?
If you ask me, I would say the WBC belt,
WBC?
The World Boxing Council. Like, I think there should just be one belt. That's why there's one champion. I think too many promoters out there are allowing these boxers to be businessmen. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have your finger on your business and understand your business, but you're doing fights that don't make sense, I would say 80% of the time.
Yeah, they're just trying to do a money grab.
Exactly. It's a money grab. You got the number one guy. I talk about this all the time. I've talked about this in many podcasts. You have the number one guy fighting a guy that's not even ranked in the top 20 a lot.
It's a money grab.
And who wants to see that? And then these fighters want $3-4 million for that. And it's like a promoter needs to sit down and be like, that doesn't make sense, man. We can't make that happen. Where in the UFC, it's the best fighting the best. You throw on a UFC fight and a card, and 9 times out of 10, it's a super competitive card from top to bottom.
I think the difference is that there's only one promoter right there.
100%.
That's why. And then in boxing is all these different other promoters, and they gotta try to meet eye to eye. And they're all trying to make
trying to make business. I have fighter A, you have fighter B. You want this much money, I want this much money. It's meeting in the middle. It's tough. It's too many hands in the pie. Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's what I think it's. And then the fights never get made.
Exactly.
The fights never get made. All the good fights that we wanted to see.
I always say, look at Pacquiao, Mayweather. That took 7+ years to make happen. Those guys should have fought when they were 31, 32 years old, and they fought at what? I think 36 and 37 years old. Like, those guys were, I don't want to say a shell of themselves, but they weren't at their peak. You don't know how that fight really would have went.
Yeah, one fight that we definitely missed out on was heavyweight, was Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua at the time.
Exactly.
Obviously now it's like
out of greed from promoters and managers.
That would have been
fighters.
Awesome at the time.
Yeah, 100%. It would have been a great fight and would have done amazing numbers. There was a lot of money to be made. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily dying by any means because I've been getting that question for years. I just think it's, the UFC has kind of swallowed that load and now they're kind of projecting forward, and they've taken the blueprint. And they're like, hey, it's like if you have a business and I want to do the same business, what do I see him doing right and wrong, and how can I capitalize on that? It's like what Netflix did to a Blockbuster.
To Blockbuster, yep, same thing.
100%. So
yeah, we'll see what happens, man. I hope. I know for a fact boxing's going to be around because there's a lot of boxing enthusiasts. Obviously, now you have the Jake Paul bringing all the young, people into it.
100%, man.
But at the same time, it's really not.
It's a show.
It's a show at the end of the day. It's really not.
It's funny because my nephews are 8 and 10, and that's the only real boxer they know is Jake Paul.
Yeah, my
And
kids,
they're like,
my kids too.
100%.
And Ryan Garcia, obviously.
So I always say Jake Paul, I'm not necessarily a fan, but I'm not a fan. He's good for the sport. He produces
He's bringing eyeballs.
and he's going to make that direction, but there's a lot of real fights out there to be made. That's not happening.
Any fight that you're anticipating right now
that I would like to see, or that's going to be happening?
That's going to be happening.
Nah, not really right now. There's a lot of fights that I would like to see, I would like to see a lot of these guys start fighting each other. I want to see, the Tank Davis fight versus Shakur, all those little group of guys, the Ryan Garcia versus Teofimo Lopez. Those are fights I really want to see make happen, and those guys absolutely should be fighting each other. They're at that age. They're at the peak of their careers. They should be fighting.
Teofimo Lopez is, to me, I don't know, right now, to me, in my eyes, the best fighter. In my eyes. That's my personal opinion. A lot of people, my group of friends, like, nah, Sam, he's, I don't know, for some reason, I don't know if it's
like currently,
the way he,
currently,
the way he carries himself, the way he loves boxing, the way he respects the belts, everything.
Yeah, he's,
in my opinion, I think that, to me, he's my favorite fighter.
And he's a great person, man. I mean, he did his promo. He came to our gym and did his promo for the fight he had out here in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Good guy. I got nothing but good things to say about him as a person. I know he's a little misunderstood, I think, more than anything else, but he is a phenomenal fighter. He's a great showman, especially when he's on. When he's on, there's not a lot of guys out there. And I've watched that kid fight since he grew up here in Davie. So I've been watching him fight since he was like 13, 14 years old. And matter of fact, I was probably one of the only people saying he was going to be Loma. Everybody thought it was nuts, but he is absolutely, a phenomenal showman. He goes out there and he puts on. I think he's a little misunderstood, but I would agree with you. He's probably one of the most entertaining, fun fighters, explosive. You just got to make sure he's on that night. He can come off of a bad fight.
I think what makes him is the fighter that he's going to be fighting.
1,000%.
That's when he, like, if he knows that he has him, we probably won't see the best Teofimo Lopez.
100%.
But if you were to fight Ryan Garcia, I think we're going to see the best. If we were to see him fight Tank Davis,
I agree.
We're going to see the best.
I mean, you need that motivation, going into, back to that topic with fighters, you need that motivation. I've been in a lot of fight camps where, you're an A-side fighter fighting a guy that you're going to wash, and it's hard for you to wake up every day and be like, I got to get into the gym and work, my ass off. I think with him at this point, I don't think he does it purposefully. I just think there's probably fights where he's like, all right, I got to be in good shape. I don't know personally. I'm not in his camp, but, he's probably like, all right, I got to be in good shape.
I think he stays in shape
year
round.
100%.
I think he stays in shape year round.
But I think that people are going to motivate you, man. When you're fighting a dog, they're gonna haunt you in your sleep. You're gonna wake up early to make sure you're at the best you can possibly be. So you're absolutely right. I think that those kind of fights are gonna, when he fought Josh Taylor, he steps up. He looked like a phenomenal fighter, and he was coming off of arguably 2 bad performances, but definitely 1 bad performance. So yeah, he's definitely probably one of the most entertaining. I'd say him. Gervonta's another super entertaining fighter. He's just got to fight that top tier competition.
I don't think he has. I think he's just been doing money grabs.
Yeah, he's been smart enough. They, again, just like you asked me with boxing, is it dying? Things like that. You have so many people in your ear like, oh, let's take this fight. There's always a more of, just like you said, a money grab fight than what the fans want to see, and a high risk fight, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Here in Miami, man, is there a lot of there's a lot of amateurs down here, right?
There's a lot of amateurs and good pros that people don't talk about. I'm trying to think of anybody.
How hard is it, to make it to that?
The 1%, man.
Really,
it is very hard. And I think even as a trainer,
but does it take the right promoter, the right trainer? Everything has to line up. Like the stars have to line up.
I remember watching an interview with LeBron James, and he said there has to be a little luck with winning a world title. In basketball. And I feel the same thing with being a fighter, because you could be a phenomenal fighter and maybe nobody sees you, and you don't get signed, or you don't have a manager, or, it takes a while to get there. It's the right fights, the right team, everything matters with that situation, because you could be a phenomenal listen, going back to, I've worked with MMA fighters that have been in phenomenal, probably some of the best fighters I've ever worked with, but had a terrible team of people around them. from management to the gym they were trained out of, you know, and that's I've seen it ruin careers, you know. So it is everything that matters, you know. You have to have the right manager, the right promoter, the right trainers, you know. Your family life has to be everything has to line up, you know. And again, like I said, like for me, I'm a very detailed trainer. All that stuff is, you know, important. I think going into now at this point, I actually train less fighters and more because I want to be when I'm training a fighter, I want to be super motivated to why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Do you ask them what got them into boxing?
No,
No.
no. I mean, I will if I'm with somebody that I know is kind of half in and out. I won't deal with that.
Do you think that most boxers go into fighting because they're either, you know, trying to overcome certain battles within themselves,
No, I think you're a
or
fighter or you're not a fighter. You know, that's just my belief.
Okay.
You know, people might feel different. I mean, I think that a lot of people come from inner city, you know, when it comes to boxing. But I think being a fighter, man, you're cut from a different cloth and you're born that way. You know, any fighter that I've met. And then there's a lot of, you know, guys that think they're fighters, but they're not. You know, you went to Lorenzo Medina's fight, top rank. He's a fighter. He was born a fighter. I say it all the time. Born to fight. It's what it is. You know, now everything else has to line up. You have to stay in shape. You have to stay motivated. It's very hard for fighters to do, but you know, when I look at a guy like that, I'm like, this kid's born to fight. I know that going into if he's down, if he's fighting a 10-round fight and he's lost all 9 rounds, he's going to go out there and try to finish that guy in that 10th round. You know, where a lot of guys aren't going to do that.
Yeah, they just
you know,
give up.
They give up, and that's, you know, those kind of guys I feel like are doing this because they think they should be doing this or it's what they enjoy rather than like this is everything for me.
why is it that us men, we somehow relate so much to like physical, you know,
We're just
pain
born that way, man.
right?
Right?
Isn't
We're
it?
just born that way as men. You're absolutely right. It's funny because I have a daughter now, and you know, I think about that all the time. It's just two differences, you know, the way you're raised, you know, and I don't care who you are. If a fight breaks out, you're gonna watch that fight. If there's whether it's in the street or in a cage or in a ring, you're gonna watch that fight. It's just especially as a man, we're just drawn to it.
Yeah, we are.
It's weird, and I think that's why, you know, boxing and MMA is so huge among men because we're just drawn to it one way or another. You know, that's actually
It just like
a big reason that I felt like I got into boxing. I'll never forget. I was getting off the bus. I was in the 6th grade, and it was the first time I actually saw a real fist fight, like a real fist fight. It was between 2 8th grade kids, and I remember thinking this one kid got the shit beat out of him, and I'm like, I'm never gonna be that kid. That was what drove me ultimately into a boxing gym. So yeah, there's something about men, man, that just enjoy it, you know.
No, 100, man. You know, especially if you were to ever see like somebody get knocked out, dude,
It'll scare the shit out of you, you know.
It
You
does,
don't want to be
man.
that guy, and I say that to a lot of people that I'm training. You know, I think every man should go into a boxing gym or an MMA gym and do some training because you have to protect your family, you have to protect yourself. You know, that stuff is really important. If you don't know how to do that, you know, God forbid you wind up in a situation where you need to, you know, it could be bad for you.
yeah, man. No, that's
Right?
been on my mind for a while.
100%. You know,
It's been on my mind for a while. You know, we have a friend in common. He trains with you, and you know, I spoke to him briefly, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be excited to hear a little bit about, you know, where you started and all that. But yeah, man, I've always wanted to, but I don't know, man. It's just you know what it is that sometimes people get intimidated
of course,
because they
100%.
walk into the gym, you know, they walk into the gym and they see all these people and you know, you get somewhat intimidated, and you're like, man, I don't want to look like a fool in front of everybody.
Absolutely.
How do you make your clients feel comfortable?
So I provide a private setting for the most part. And I think that's important. That's something that I think as a trainer, as I've developed, everything I do is one-on-one based, you know, as of right now. Because one, I want you to get the best quality you can get. If you're in there with me, I want you to be like, man, I learned this X, Y, and Z today. But also I try to provide that private setting because it is, even if you go into an LA Fitness and you haven't worked out in a couple of years, it can be an intimidating, you know, environment. So with a boxing gym, you're going into an actual boxing gym, you know, it's especially as a man, your ego and everything else, and that's what I think keeps people away from the gym.
You have to put
right?
your pride aside.
100%.
For sure, you have to put your pride aside. You
You
can't go in
absolutely
there
do.
thinking that you'll be able
You
to.
absolutely do. So what I
show
try to do
off.
is I try to provide that comfortability. I've been doing this so long, you know, I've realized that both for men and women, you know, I try to provide a private setting. My gym is 1,300 square feet. Most of the time when you come in that gym, it's just you and I. That way there's no real judgment. And I try my hardest to make you feel comfortable. I never as a trainer, you know, that's something I learned over the years of training in real boxing gyms. You know, a lot of trainers will, you know, they'll shit on you. You know, I try to provide a comfortability feeling. Like I want you to feel good at what you're doing and that you're progressing and you're getting better.
That's a great satisfaction too, though.
100%.
When you see them start and then all of a sudden they.
I've had clients that have been with me for like 10 plus years. You know, it's a great workout, but also you're learning a craft. You know what I mean? You're learning to defend yourself. But it absolutely is that. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, from a marketing perspective, I know that, you know, through my social media, people probably are intimidated, like, oh, he only works with advanced people. And I try to make sure that when you come into the gym, you know, it's you and me in there for the most part, most of the time. You're in a comfortable setting, and then there's no real judgment. You know, you're not going to get that in my space, at least.
Yeah, especially now there's a lot of, you hear in social media all these people talk about bullying, this and that. I think like for kids in general too, self-defense is definitely.
It's really important, man. I think that, you know, that gave me so much character growing up. I learned to box when I always felt like I was a pretty tough kid, but I learned to box, you know, at 13, 14 years old, and that carried my confidence anywhere I went, you know, and now even more, you know, as a trainer, you know, I don't know about you, but I hated public speaking growing up. You know,
everybody gets
everybody,
nervous.
yeah, I would think.
So this day I get
but
nervous,
I do
man.
seminars in front of 60, 70 people, and I feel confident doing it. And I feel like boxing has given me that lane to do so.
So you think it builds self-confidence?
100%, 1,000%, you know. You're only going to get more confident doing that, right? So, yeah, absolutely, especially for a kid, you know. Bullying is a natural thing. It's important that
of course
the audience understand that, you know, especially the young kids.
Yeah,
everybody got bullied.
100%.
I don't care who you were and how tough you were. At some point, you got bullied. It's how you reacted to it, how you developed from it, you know. And when I talk to the young kids that I train now, you know, that come to the gym for any kind of reason like that, like, understand it's important that everybody got bullied. You know, it's just how you develop from it and you learn from it, you know, and making sure it doesn't happen again and again and again. It saddens me to hear that these kids do, you know, terrible things to themselves when they're getting bullied, you know. And me and you grew up around the same time. There wasn't social media like that. You weren't, if you got bullied, it was in school and it stopped there. It wasn't, you got home and you were getting bullied on social media and everything else, right? So
yeah, I I don't know. Sometimes it just, I don't know, man. Sometimes I just feel like the generation now is kind of like weak-minded.
1,000%.
But I don't know if it's us, you know.
It's,
if
how old are you?
I'm 35.
It's our generation, I feel like, because
I have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
But, you know, I kind of tell them how it is.
It's great.
You know, and you know, yeah, you know, and I call my kids out on bullshit. Hey,
you
look,
gotta hold them accountable.
I of course.
My parents were tough on me, and I feel like, you know, when I look at the trajectory of why, you know, the new generation, our kids, are as soft as they are, if you will, it's because us as parents, you know, we've maybe created that luxury for them, right? You know, I don't know. I mean, my dad was tough on me. If I had an issue, I had to deal with it, you know. If I couldn't handle it verbally with talking with somebody, I had to handle it physically, and that's just being a boy growing up, you know. And I think now it's, you know, everybody's so scared of that. And unfortunately, that's part of life, man. You're going to deal with that in school. You're going to get older. You're going to deal with bosses that are assholes. It's just part of life, you know. And it's I feel like it can be developing, you know, but I guess maybe it's something we're doing with our kids, you know?
No, of course, man. It's just, I don't know, man. I really don't know. Social media also, you know, plays a big role.
100%.
You know, our kids are obviously, you know, watching YouTube videos.
We live in a
because how old is your daughter? Your daughter's a baby.
She's a baby. Yeah,
she's a
but
baby
I think about
still.
that all the time. Like,
now,
when she gets older,
how's it gonna be 10 years from now? 15 years from now?
Dealing with bullies, making sure that she understands it's a part, and especially girls. I know girls could be mean, You know, I think that the problem with us is we live in a what's the word? With social media, everybody wants to be somebody they're not, or be the person that they see, and you only know so much about that person's life on social media, right? They're only showing the highlights and things like that. And I think often, it creates a lot of insecurity with kids. It starts at a young age and then it kind of develops into who they are because they see something like, I want to be like that person, but I'm not. You don't know who that is, if they're happy, if they're not happy, things
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
man.
It's all a life lesson. And going back to that, I feel like not just boxing or MMA, but I feel like sports in general build kids' confidence. It teaches them how to network, how to meet people, how to socialize with other kids, how to be confident in what they're doing. It's just, you know, I don't know. Maybe that's the issue with social media these days.
Do you think most most boxers that you've trained, amateur or professional, are they aligned with God?
Some are, some aren't. I think that's again like a personal thing of who they are. You know, I
Or
think
or some higher power?
I'll
Do they
tell you when I
believe?
get.
Do they
I
believe
think when
in
they get
some?
older, they do. I think as athletes get older in their career, they start to find God a little bit more. When they're younger, they're just going, and they're so focused on their own mission and their own path that you don't really think about that. Some maybe, but I do find that as they get older, you find athletes, talking about God a little bit more and in that situation,
Do you do you tend to be like that father figure towards them or that older brother?
I try with some of them, I try with some of them. Some of them are, you know, self-sufficient, and I try to guide them as much. Like I said, for me, if I want to train you at this point at 38 years old in my life, I'm gonna make sure that if I'm training you, we have a relationship with each other that's more than just boxing. I know about your family, you know about my family. I try to go out with them a little bit, go out to grab something to eat, whatever it may be, spend a little bit of time, maybe watching the fights together, whatever it is, because I think that's very important. For me personally, some trainers don't want no personal relationships with their fighters. It's strictly business, and I understand that. But
Yeah, but I
yeah,
find that weird though, because
I do.
you wanna get
I
as
do.
close as possible, because you want to have that bond.
Sure. But I always tell people this, like especially young trainers. I mentor a couple of young trainers or people that want to be trainers. I always say this isn't the Rocky Balboa movie. This isn't Mickey and Rocky. It's often not that case actually. Money gets involved, politics, emotions, etc. Um, Kind of the way it goes sometimes, I do try to have that personal connection with somebody. That's what I want if I'm going to train you, if I'm going to work on with you. I want to have that. Otherwise, I just feel like I can't work with you, man. Just coming to work, basically. I might as well go get a job.
Have you had any boxer or boxers kind of, we were talking about how the team, you know, the boxers don't doesn't want us into the team,
Hmm.
you know, to the trainers, to the team in general. Do you do you have some, or have you had an experience that a boxer tells you, "Hey, look, coach, I prefer if you do this way," and they make it seem,
100%.
they make you see it in their way, and you're like, damn, you know what, I didn't think about that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Let
absolutely.
me work on this on, you also grow as well. It's
I
not
think,
just
yeah,
you
I
being the
think
teacher, but they
with
also teach
training
you.
somebody for a fight, it's a collaboration. I do feel that way. There's trainers out there. I guess I'm just different in that sense. There's trainers it's my way or the highway. And to clarify, when I said, I don't make fighters, or fighters don't make me, I make fighters, I meant it in the sense that like there's always going to be another fighter. There's always going to be another person. A lot of people think like you need me. A lot of fighters think that like you need me, I don't need you. And I don't feel that way because I don't want to do business like that. But it is a collaboration. I have to come to the table if you're getting ready for a fight and be like, "Hey, this is what I like. These are the things that I like for this fight in particular. I want to hear your thoughts, what you think, you like and what you feel comfortable." Because in the end of the day, you're the car, you know what I mean? You're the driver. We have to come together and figure that out. Now there might be situations where it's like, I don't want to do any of this. I want to do this. I've had that plenty of times. I've had guys that are like, I don't want to spar. you know.
Yeah, they
And
come in there. It's like
they,
you going to work too,
yeah,
though. Sometimes
if
sometimes
you
you don't
only
want to go
want to
to
do
work.
what you want to do, I'm not the trainer for you.
Okay.
You know, period, point blank. And you run into a lot of that. You run into I'd say 50% of the time, fighters want to do what they want to do, and then it's almost like, well, I'm just a cheerleader as a coach then, you know. And when you're young, and I say this to all trainers, when you're young, sometimes you'll do that for a little while. You know, it's just like, hey, you got to build your credibility with fighters and stuff like that. But as again for me, as I got older, I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. If I'm gonna waste time from my family and my business, and I'm working with a fighter, you know, for a specific fight, I'm not gonna come to work to be, you know, kind of told what to do and what you want me to do, you know. And I've had fighters that are like, hey, listen, I don't want to spar. This is what I want to do. I want to come in. I want you here every day, kind of thing. I'm gonna hit the mitts. You know, you hold the bag. Like this is what I want to do. And now at this point, I just don't deal with that. Like I got way better things to do than to deal with that. But when you're young, you're kind of coming up, and like I said earlier, you're learning what you should and shouldn't be doing as a trainer. You know, especially if you're learning on the job. Like, all right, you know, there's been times where I was like, all right, that's what you want to do, we'll do that. And then now as you get older, you're like, I'm not doing that. Go find another trainer, man. It's just I'm not the guy for you. All right.
Yeah, going into an actual fight, when you know, how important is it for the corner to show that like the support in the sense, obviously you're not there fighting the fight for the fighter, but you're in the corner, and you have to kind of give them that belief that, hey, we got this.
It's everything.
How hard is it for you, even though like you know that they're down, and somehow you have to find the words to kind of find that encouragement so they could be like, you know what, yeah, I got this, to still go out there and give it their all.
It's everything. I mean, everybody's different, right? You run a business, you have employees. You can't talk to John the way you can talk to Jamie, right? And manage them and push them. It's the same thing with fighters. Some need it. Some need hardcore. They need more motivation in the corner than they need details. You know, some fighters are so their IQ is so sharp that you can go in there in that corner and give them a detail, and they're gonna take it. They're gonna use it. They're gonna apply it. That's all they want to hear is details. What I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, what I need to adjust, etc. Other fighters, you just need to, you know, motivate them, keep pushing them. You know, everybody's different, and that's you learn that as a trainer. Like, all right, this is what you know. You're dealing with different personalities more than anything else. So it's basically learning how to manage that one individual over the next. So it is very important. It's just understanding, you know, how to get that individual to do what you need him to do. Sometimes they don't understand it.
Yeah. What would you say would be your ultimate goal out of all this? Obviously, running a successful business, your academy, but what to you something that's maybe not, you know, doesn't have to do with money at all. What is the ultimate goal for Kevin to a fulfillment out of all this that you're doing?
I always say the three things I want to do with people is I want to motivate, educate, and inspire them. And that's always the goal. And it's funny, I was thinking about 2025 is coming up, and I'm like, this year I really, more so than anything, I want to inspire people, you know, whether it's business or with fighters or my clients or my family. You know, I want to do that. So that's always my goal, more than, you know, anything else, is to do that. Whether it's, you know, me running my own business and stepping into the next level and making it, scaling it to a bigger height, and my family seeing that, like, man, Kevin really, I was the first one in my family to go out and open my own business and do something on my own. That was hard.
Same here.
You know, that was hard, and I can only hope that I inspire, you know, my brothers and my sister, my mom and my dad, you know, or my wife or my daughter when she gets older, to say, hey, you know, my father followed his dreams. I think that more than anything else, as I get older, is more important than anything else, is just educating, motivating, and inspiring people. So if I can do any of those three things, I'm on the right boat, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they see somebody close to them, some family member, do something out of the norm and succeed, it triggers something in their mind that's saying, you know what, it's possible.
100%.
I could do it.
100%. I worked a job while I was training for, I want to say, like 15 years. I worked a full-time job, and I would train in the morning. I would train my clients and fighters in the morning and at night. I did it for a long time out of pure fear, like anything else. So if I can, you know, inspire people to be like, man, he did this, you know, I want to do it too. You know, I always say that to my wife, about our daughter. I want her to look at things and be like, wow, my parents, they pursued their dreams, they inspire me, and I think that's our job in our generation now, where our parents probably grew up, they were the baby boomers,
Just work.
they work. Hey, we work.
Work
We
to
put
provide.
food. Yeah, we provide you a nice home, education, etc. Where I think our job now is to inspire our children to do things like that they want to do. Pursuing dreams, and that's something
And to show them
different.
that it's possible.
100%. And I think that is ultimately my goal, is just to inspire anybody, whether it's a fighter, whether it's a client,
A
whether
friend.
it's friend, family, whatever it is. If I could do those three things, I'm happy. I could die a happy man. You know.
That's awesome, man. Where do you see yourself? What are some goals for you in the next, 2 years, 5 years?
So as I get older, I make the joke all the time, especially after having a kid. I'm sure you relate to this. I've been a personal trainer, and my body takes a beating. I mean, on the daily, I'm like a punching bag all day. As I get older, I'm 38, going to be 39 soon. I would like to scale my business to where I'm doing more group fitness classes, getting out there to a bigger audience. So within the next 2 years, I want to scale my gym. I want to be able to hire help, train trainers, and just continue to grow like that. Because now I'm starting to get older, and it's like, man, I don't have the same kind of time where I can, dedicate my body to this as much. Otherwise I won't last long. And if I'm still doing what I'm doing at this pace in the next 5 years, my body will be shot. So I have to learn to coach to a more broader audience, scaling my business, getting a little bit of a bigger space. And that's it, really.
Besides the training, how obviously, what they eat as well. Do you partner up
I
with
personally
anybody, or
don't.
do you?
So I mean, I have
You should
actually a
have.
client of mine. He owns eClean,
Okay.
the company. So I mean, a lot of the fighters will work directly with him.
Okay.
I don't handle the nutrition exactly.
Yeah, but you pass on.
He sponsors a lot of our athletes and things like that. But we have a team of that. We have a strength and conditioning coach we use. We have recovery guys. We have, Mike from eClean that'll help them with their food and their nutrition and stuff. So yeah, I mean, that is very important. You have to have, like I said, to be great, you have to have a good team of people around you. You have to have a good nutritionist, a good strength and conditioning coach. You have to have good coaches, your family. Everything has to be intact.
What are the fundamentals or the basics as far as getting a fighter ready to a fight, besides obviously putting the miles in, or if you could at least explain a little bit, not obviously, because there's some people that they'll watch whatever thing on YouTube behind the scenes, but
Yeah.
what be the stuff that they don't show us. What are some things that you guys do, especially when it's time to cut weight? There's things that you see that fighters try to cut weight, and some we're starting to see now how deadly it could be.
Yeah, it's all those things matter. And that's why I say, if I'm going to work with a fighter at this point, I want to be inspired. I want to have a good relationship with that person, because you're married to that person for as long as that camp is. I mean, you're married to them for their whole career, but if you're doing this right, if you're a real good coach and you're working with your fighters, you're giving, hours a day, you're putting in a lot of time, all that stuff matters. There's a lot that goes into training an athlete, training a fighter for a competitive fight, aside from just their actual technical days. They have peak weeks, they have technical days, they have, hard weeks, hard days, easy days. They're cutting weight. They're doing so many things. They're sparring. They're trying to manage so much. So it is, I think that now, like I was saying earlier, a lot of trainers are just, I'm going in and training this person. That's it. There's a lot more that's involved. And as I get older and I want to work with a fighter specifically, I want to be happy that I'm doing the work, because there's so much more that goes into it that people don't see leading up to that fight. It's tough. It's emotional. It's physical. It's all those things combined.
But what's the regimen? Like, what's the
Like a daily or
yeah
weekly thing?
yeah
So if you're putting in let's just say a 6-week camp, right? For me, when I structure a 6-week camp, if I'm really putting in that work, you're sparring twice a week, right? You're doing your work every day. I personally would like somebody to train twice a day, whether it's you're coming in to me at 10 o'clock and we're working from 10 to 12 and we're doing technical stuff, whether it's on the mitts, bag, we're going over a game plan. Then you go home, you recover, you eat, whatever, and then you go back and either do your strength and conditioning, your road work, or sometimes you're coming back to the gym and actually going back over something else, technically. Then you accompany your sparring twice a week. Could be any days that work for you or the sparring partners, etc. So let's say, Monday you're coming in and you're doing a technical day, right? I'll give you a week. You're doing a technical day. We're going over a game plan. We're putting in about 2 hours of work. Whether it's like I said, the mitts, bag work, whatever it is. Tuesday you come in and you spar. Then after sparring, you go home, you relax, and then you run that night. Wednesday you can come in, you can put in a hard session, hard 2 hours of fight conditioning drills. Go home, you come back, maybe we do technical work. Thursday you spar again, and it just repeats itself. And that's the hard part about fighting. People don't understand is it's monotonous and it's every day, it's repetitive. You're coming in and you're beating the drum every single day. It's not this sexy thing that people think of. You're coming in and think to yourself, if you're doing that every single day, Monday through essentially Saturday, you rest on Sunday, you come back on Monday the following week, you're doing it again and again and again, and that's week 2, 3, 4, 5. So it does get to a point exhausting, physically and mentally. That's why I'm big about like burnout with my fighters. I always make sure that after they fight, they take their time off. It resets themselves from the gym. They get that rest mentally and physically, and then when they're not training for a fight, I'm not ramping them into the gym as hard. You know what I mean? You come in, 3 days a week, get a little sweat, stay sharp. There's a science to it, man.
Is it true that, when boxers are trained like that to like stay away from sex for those 8 weeks or is it, or that's all like a mental thing?
I think that's a mental thing, me personally. Some people it works for it. I've had fighters that have sex with their wives or girlfriends
While
the
training.
night before the fight.
Yeah.
And then other people don't do it because of their legs,
How about drinking alcohol or smoking weed or
none of that? You're an athlete, man. You shouldn't be doing any of that stuff.
okay.
I'm big about that. Maybe smoking weed if you feel like you need it, it helps you recover and sleep. I've worked with fighters that couldn't sleep without smoking. Alcohol is a killer to careers. I don't care what anybody says. It absolutely. It's one thing if you want to celebrate and have, you fight, you win, and that night you have a couple of drinks and, you enjoy yourself for that weekend. But you can't be drinking when you're out of camp, and that kills your career, man. It's bad for us just in general, let alone
but doesn't
being
it
an
help?
athlete.
But doesn't it help? Like, let's say, for example, like drinking like a glass of wine or something. Doesn't it help with the weight cut since it dehydrates you?
I don't know as far as that goes, like the science of it. I would never drink wine. But I would never be like, hey, listen, you're cutting weight this week. I want you to drink wine.
Yeah.
I just think that, when you're putting alcohol in your body in general, just a regular
I said
human being,
wine
it's
because
not-
obviously, not hard liquor.
It's one thing,
wine,
like I said,
wine.
you want to celebrate, you win a fight, you should celebrate, you should enjoy yourself, and you should have that release, right? Like anything else, like you've put in a lot of work to that fight. But
How about after camp? You made weight, everything's good that night before.
Absolutely not. No
The
alcohol.
night
man.
before. No,
alcohol.
okay.
Hell no. No alcohol. Yeah, you're about to embark in a battle, man. The next day, you should not be drinking. When you're in camp, you definitely shouldn't be drinking, at all. And I try to tell everybody, like, some of the best athletes I've ever worked with have never drank, and refused to because
Look at Floyd.
Yeah, exactly. It slows you down drastically. So yeah, no drinking. Make sure that's no drinking.
Who top five
Of all time?
yeah, for you?
Roy Jones, Muhammad Ali, Canelo Alvarez, Floyd Mayweather.
How about out of these young guys now that they all started at 130, 135 now, some at 140.
On like a list
right
or just
now.
a particular order?
No, yeah, well right now who do you think out of the
Ryan
5
Garcia,
or 6
Devin Haney,
yeah, out of the 5 or 6
Teofimo Lopez, Gervonta Davis, you got the 4 of them. You got Keyshawn Davis in the mix. Man, it's real hard, I'll be honest with you.
if you had to put them one
You got to think to yourself, the eye test. Gervonta Davis passes the eye test for me every time. He's phenomenal. They're all really good fighters. I think that obviously Ryan already beat Devin Haney. So
that was a big I was there at the
Devin
fight.
Haney's definitely, and I'm a I was a big fan of Devin Haney up until this last fight, and him pulling some of
the stuff that he
stupid
was
moves he's done
yeah.
with suing in the fight and all that other.
I think he has great. Like I saw him. I was like, you know what, him and Shakur, as like the next
phenomenal abilities.
boxing, as the next Mayweather.
I think
especially
Gervonta. I'd have to say Gervonta beats all these boys, in my opinion. If locked in and focused. They fought right now. I think that Tio's,
Skill-wise?
again, like we were saying, skill wise, it would probably be Shakur. He's, he knows how to hit and not get hit, but we've never really seen him
None of them.
tested in the sense of, I think his best win was Oscar Valdez, and he made Oscar Valdez look bad. He's that phenomenal of a fighter, but what happens when he's really under fire? I think Tio, if he comes in shape, focused, ready, he's also up there, one or two. And I think Devin's kind of, the word's out on Devin in the sense that he can't take a punch. That's always been the thought process, and it kind of showed. So I would have to say, if I'm going to go in order, I'm going to say Gervonta, Shakur, Tio, Ryan, Devin.
I agree with you on that order. I agree with you. One of the most upsetting fights for me was Crawford and Spence. I'm a huge Spence fan, bro.
Oh, you were heartbroken, huh?
Oh man,
I
to
would be
this
lying.
day, bro. To
this day.
To this day, man.
I would be
to
lying
this
if
day.
I didn't think that Spence was going to win that fight. I thought that, he's a forward and backwards fighter. He doesn't really know how to take angles, and I thought that might play a factor. I didn't think it was going to play the factor that
I don't think
did.
it was going to be a beatdown like that.
I thought he was a lot bigger and stronger. I never thought that was going to happen. I mean, Crawford's a phenomenal fighter. He's probably, he's pound for pound. I'd say he's number 2 under Canelo.
Do you think the accident that Spence was in kind of affected him?
Also, from what I understand, from what I've heard, he's a big drinker.
Oh,
and that's why I say no alcohol. I hear he drinks a lot, or was. I don't know if he still is, but that plays a factor, man. That wears down your body.
Yeah.
I tell athletes all the time, man. Alcohol will kill your career as fast as cancer. It's just what it is. I don't. That's just my personal belief.
Yeah, I was a huge Spence fan. Loved the way he went to the body. But yeah, man, it's that was very disappointing.
Heartbreaking for you.
Yeah,
I felt the same thing. I felt the
super.
Same. But you know what? I don't think anybody thought that fight was going to play out like that, right? Like, I thought it was going to be a close fight, and then somebody would kind of walk away with maybe 3 or 4 rounds extra in the bag. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect them to stop each other. I did not. I didn't think it was going to be that fight. And for Crawford to stop him, I was blown away.
Yeah, lost money that fight for sure.
Sorry, man.
What are some fights that you want to see?
I want to see Crawford versus Shakur Stevenson. I would like to see Tio versus either Keyshawn Davis or Devin Haney or Ryan Garcia. One of those guys. Those are big fights I want to see. I want to see Canelo versus Benavidez like anybody else.
What do you think about Benavidez now fighting Morrell?
I think that's going to be a good fight, man. I think that's going to be a fun, good fight. I think that they match up well with each other.
The last fight they had, they obviously them moving up in weight, it's not the same as they were at 168.
100%.
So I think this fight coming up right now with them two is definitely.
I want to see Edgar Berlanga fight maybe one of the Charlos. I think that's a good fight for him.
Or Caleb Plant.
Or Caleb Plant. I would rather see the Caleb Plant fight for sure.
I would like to see that fight.
Shout out to my boy Caleb Plant.
Yeah, man.
I would love to see that fight. I think they should actually make that because they have a little bit of bad blood. But
that fight
those are good fights, man. Those are fights that people really want to see.
There's so many fights,
and
man.
you can market that, and you could make that interesting to the people that aren't even just boxing fans. I always say, like, what would my wife want to see? Because she'll watch fighting if I'm watching it, and every now and again she'll be a little bit more intrigued in a fight than I would think. So you have to market like that. Like, all right, what does your parents want to see? What does your wife want to see? Things like that makes sense. So yeah, those are fights that I think would be great. I think those guys, those little 5 guys right down there, that 135, 140, they should all be competing with each other. So we'll see. I would love to see Tio fight Ryan Garcia. I think that'd be an awesome fight.
That'd be a great comeback fight for Garcia.
100%.
And Tio just wants that recognition as well. He obviously, I think he deserves that big payday.
I agree. The problem with him is he talks a little crazy,
I know.
and that turns off fans.
Really, but I don't know. To me, it doesn't, man.
It does, man. I mean, so many people in the boxing community are like, man, why doesn't this kid just shut up? Sometimes, And like I said, I've met him. He's such a great kid, and I always say, I'm like, man. If this
him
guy,
and his dad is super cool.
Yeah,
too.
I'm like, yeah. If he just did this, he'd be great. People would love him. I think sometimes when you put a mic in front of people's faces, they just don't know when to stop talking or how to talk.
Maybe they're just doing that to kind of trigger the big
Possibly.
fight.
Possibly. You know, they deserve a big fight.
Where where do you see, or to finish, to kind of wrap up, where do you see your academy going this next 2025, and where obviously put in the plug, where can they follow you, where can they subscribe, if there is something.
So I would like to expand in the sense of I would like to open up to more of the general population. Right now, again, I'm all private one-on-one. I offer about 40 spots a week. I get booked up for all those spaces. So I would like to be able to give a little bit more of me to the general population. So scaling my business, I don't want to go crazy big in the sense where, you know, I want to make sure if you're coming to a boxing class of mine, you're still getting the attention from me. Or if I have a teacher, that you're able at some point, he's able to tap you on the shoulder, correct something. I don't want to be one of these gyms that like you're coming in, you're just hitting the bag, you're not getting any detail. So 2025, I would like to scale my business for sure. Open up a little bit more to where I'm able to access a lot more clientele in that sense, whether it's beginners or advanced. You can follow me at Kevin_Gleason7 on Instagram. Same thing. You can follow me on YouTube at Coach Kev.
Coach Kev, guys. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for the
Appreciate you having
time.
me on, man.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you,
And
Jay.
and until next time, bro.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, guys.